Have you ever met someone and given off what you thought was a terrible first impression? Or perhaps you've met someone, maybe recently, that gave you a bad first impression. How do you feel about that person now? In this video, we're going to be talking about the use of stereotypes in game design. Hi, my name is Geedy McD. Here on the channel, we talk about the ins and outs of game design so that you are equipped to analyse, discuss and create great games. It turns out, as humans, we base a lot of what we think about a person on our first impression of them. So much so that there is research showing that even when we are presented with information that contradicts our first impression, we tend to favour the first impression version over the more recent contradicting version. A lot occurs in that first split second of meeting someone. We have to assess a lot about them, like who they are, whether they are a threat, what manner to interact with them, and so on. This is why crafting a good first impression for your characters is important. Just as with humans, the first impression for a game character occurs from the first glance. As it is often said, you only get one first impression. The same is true for game characters. It is important to make that first impression pack as much punch as possible. One of the things a designer can utilise to direct the first impression is stereotypes. Our brains have evolved to form schemas that relate a set of attributes to something. This also applies to attributing certain sets of attributes to certain types of people and forming one of these schemas. This is so that when meeting someone or interacting with someone, we already have a large amount of the work done for us, and we can make a quick judgment about which schema this person fits into. This is extremely useful when thinking about game characters because we can use a stereotype to quickly communicate a lot of information about a character in the game world, leveraging these schemas that already exist in our heads or the heads of the player. Let's try an example to demonstrate this phenomenon. I'll throw a picture of something up here and you tell me what sort of person the owner might be. You straight away know that's a policeman's nightstick. Maybe you said security guard, but I can almost guarantee that you didn't say nurse. Anyone can use a nightstick, however. Your brain associated this item with a certain type of person. Let's do another. Probably a student graduating from college. And this example is good because if you picked it to that much detail, you know that this person is educated. You know that they have probably spent the last few years of their life studying. Now they've finished. Using this, you can imagine how they are feeling. You could even pick locational aspects like where they are going, have been, or are going to be. The university, the graduation hall, partying. Both of these are material items, but you can do it with physique too. This guy looks menacing. So if you guess the owner of the items in the two previous questions, you can see how you can use stereotypes to communicate a lot quickly. So when thinking about game characters and designing them, you can make a merchant look like a merchant, or a town's guardsman look like a town's guardsman. Leverage what the player already knows from their own culture to take the work off you. One fantastic example of this is this meme. Another really good example is just about any game with classes such as Hunter, Wizard, Knight, etc. The Hunter is always quick and agile looking, often thin and athletic. The Knight is burly and wears a huge set of armour that looks like it weighs a ton. The Wizard is often in some form of robe and probably carrying a staff. None of these are set in stone rules, but by applying these stereotypes to the game, the designers leverage what you already know to educate us on the systems of the game. When using stereotypes, we aim to communicate a lot quickly, so that a player knows what we want them to know and we can move on with the game without bogging down the player with trying to tell them everything about a new person in a game. What if we want to create depth though? We also need characters to stand out from the rest, right? There are a few ways that we can approach creating depth by utilising stereotypes. One way to create depth is to set up a stereotype, or several, and then deviate from these constructions. This will create a mismatch of the schemas in our head and we will see the character in a new light. For example, you could have a big burly knight come off the battlefield. His sword is dripping with blood, he's insulting people in the tavern, he's intimidating people for what he wants. If this were as a party member, our experience with big burly types in the media, and maybe in real life as well, will sell us on a particular way this character is supposed to act. He sounds like a tank, he's probably pretty strong, he might be stubborn or a difficult person to get along with. And making these assumptions can sell his role in the party and mechanically within the game. then to add death later, have him sneak off, only for the player to find him attending ballet lessons with a tavern girl. The break in stereotype of how this character has already been portrayed will jar the player out of their preconceptions. This is a very blunt example, and good characters will be way more nuanced than this, but it illustrates how breaking already established stereotypes can create depth within a character's story. Let's talk about timing the first impression for a second. In regards to depth, it is important to understand how much information you want to convey to the player about the character in the first impression. For flat characters or cardboard characters, it is okay to convey a lot of information about the character in the first impression. If you have a shopkeep and a townsguard in a scene, you can just tell the player this is a shopkeep and this is a townsguard. Dress them that way, model them that way, etc. It should be done more in narrative than that, but it's okay to do so. When dealing with a deep character, it is important to consider how much is revealed straight away. If you don't reveal everything at once, you can create a sense of mystery around a character which can draw some players in. Inversely, it is possible to convey too much information. You don't want to exhaust your information and be left with less to work with when developing the character later. This may lead to putting the character in unnatural situations to try to develop them, which will feel wrong to the player. Before we finish up, we do need to talk about ethics. Ew, ethics. I know, I get it. Stereotypes can be very beneficial for a game. We've spent some time now discussing how they can be used to communicate our intent with the player. Stereotypes can also be extremely harmful when used incorrectly for both the game and potentially the community or subgroups of the community at large. Stereotypes used in-game will be picked up to some extent by the players of the game. Using stereotypes lazily can do more harm than good, and can insult and ostracize segments of the player base. This is especially true when it comes to gender and race stereotypes. The damsel in distress, the flamboyant gay man, the African American gang member. These are all potential stereotypes that could be used, but a degree of care needs to be taken when doing so as not to misrepresent or hurt the groups in question. Be responsible when using stereotypes and have a deep understanding of what you are conveying when you apply them. Then apply them carefully and with the intent to communicate something specific. With all that said, stereotypes have been blatantly and broadly applied to games before. Why don't you guys tell me where you thought stereotypes were used the worst, and chuck it in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, maybe consider giving it a like so that we can potentially get it in front of more people. And if you are interested in seeing more game design, well, why not subscribe to the channel? Here on the channel, we talk about the ins and outs of game design so that you are equipped to analyze, discuss, and create great games.